Thanks, guys, for being here. This is a wonderful crowd. Gordon, it's an honor, pleasure to sit down with you. I
was just going to say, I'm glad you're here with me because I just got in from Japan last night.
I'll keep you awake. Maybe we could start off talking about why it is that the issue of ethics has become so important for you to talk about these days. I mean, you've been a documentarian for a long time, but in recent years, this question of ethics has been one that you've been talking to folks a lot about. Could you say why you think that's particularly relevant now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we're at the right place to talk about that. I think when I think about it, Quinn always had ethical concerns, and there were things that were important to us right from the start in terms of making documentary. But the reason I've been talking about it a lot over the last few years is because of Pat Ofterheide, who runs the Center for Social Media, an academic who challenges our community with kinds of ideas and things that we should be paying attention to. And she had me do a keynote at her conference one year, and it was like, right, we should be talking a lot more about this. And one of our principles from early on was transparency and trying to make our films transparent about the artifice that we use and the kind of things that we do. And it's like, yeah, we also should be transparent about our ethics.
Transparent because you were influenced by cinema verite and that sort of...
Yes and no. I was just in Japan. I was at I was there speaking about fair use and intellectual property rights, but I was with a bunch of filmmakers, and I think that I don't believe that in the early years of cinema verite that the founders of it claimed that they were telling cinema truth, you know, that there was some technique that got you to the truth. I've always felt that's a red herring, a false issue, but some of the academics who were there were really challenging me, saying, no, they said these things, and you know, so now I have to go back and look. But I know I never said it, you know. But I think it's because it does have to do with verite, but I think the way I've always thought about it and what I frame my thinking about ethics with got clear to me when actually Judy Hoffman introduced me, who's a professor of film studies here at the university, or film production, to the work, and then we met Bill Nichols. And he frames it in a way that I'd sort of always thought about it, but he really gave me a way to articulate it, which is you have a responsibility to your audience to tell the truth, to be honest, to kind of let them know. Ultimately, I think that the truth of a work depends on the integrity of the maker. It's not a magic technical thing. But you also have a responsibility in documentary, and I think it's a particular responsibility for documentary, to your subjects, to the people who are in your films. Journalistic ethics are a little bit different. It's a shorter time frame, it's a different kind of venue, but when we spend 4, 5, 8 years in people's lives, in the most intimate aspects of their lives, we have responsibilities to them too. And those things can be in contradiction with each other. Sometimes, for instance, unlike journalists, we always show the work to the subjects before it's finished, when they still have a chance to say, oh, wait, you know, you can't put that in there. And the way I think about this is with everyday people who I would say they're powerful, but they're powerful in a kind of everyday man's kind of way. And I say, you know, you'll be able to see this, and if there's something you really can't live with, we'll take it out. But we're going to have an argument about it. I'm going to have to try and convince you that we need it for the movie or why it's important, or maybe you'll be right and I'll really listen to you. But at the end of the day, if I can't convince you, we'll take it out. With people who are more powerful, for instance, when we made the film with Bill T. Jones, I think I probably said something similar to him, only slightly different, which is, we're going to have the same argument. We'll really have a battle about it. But at the end of the day, it's our film. I have to decide. So, you know, because I think it's just a different situation. But I open it up and let people really say to us, you know, gee, we can't really have
Right.
that.
That's really interesting. So you've brought a range of examples of work to sort of walk us through some of the ways that these...
maybe we'll change, just since we just talked about that.
Yeah.
Let's look at what I'm going to go for is clip number 30, Near Miss Passport. And this is a situation from The New Americans. It's a film about immigration. I'm filming with a Palestinian woman that we have followed coming to the country. And it's 9/11. It's that day. And we're with the family. And she has had, you know, some incidents at work, and some people have said things to her, and her dream was to come to America and to, you know, become an American citizen. And she's making coffee, and you can go ahead and play it. I'll just stop, or I'll stop as soon as it gets relevant. You can go ahead and find it, and I'll just sort of continue to set it up. So she's making coffee, and I'm interviewing her while she's making coffee, and she's talking about she doesn't care about her green card anymore. She's just going to stick with her Palestinian passport. While I'm filming this scene, the scene you're going to see a little clip of, which is from The New Americans, our 7-hour series about immigration, she says some other extremely harsh things about America. And right in the moment, she looks up after she says them, she says, I don't want that in the movie. And right in the moment, I'm able to say to her, I understand. I'd never put that in the film because I know what you mean. Her feelings had been hurt. People had said things to her. She was upset. It was a fairly traumatic time. And my judgment was an American audience could not hear those things from her in the way that she said them. It wasn't exactly what she meant to say. And so she would be misunderstood. And so it wouldn't be fair to include those things in the film. Let me know if you have it. Okay, because if you don't, we can go on to a different one.
You have something less than 20.
Okay, something less than 20. Okay, anyway, that's the story. In the clip, she's making the coffee and she says
Oh, they found it.
Oh, they found it?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the clip.
Yes.
Okay.
It was worth it.
Barely 2 months after September 11th, Hatham's community organization's office is gutted by a fire. He had just been promoted to co-director.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, guys. Yeah, this used to be my office.
You never have any clue who...
No, they have no idea.
They know it's arson.
They know it's arson. There's no speculation as to motive or the who and the what.
Doesn't look like what it's described, but at least it's the same movie, and that is her, that's her husband.
Okay.
When we found out about it, we were just appalled.
And this is obviously after 9/11.
Right.
You know, somebody from the group could come and talk, so we can help figure out what we could do and how we could be supportive.
Sure, thank you. You know, grew up in this place, and you know, it's a lot of the people in the community feel as if it's theirs.
This is the only Arab American community center in Chicago.
So you feel a definite sense of ownership in the place. And so I don't know how long it's going to take before we are able to fix the place up and get back in here, but we're going to rebuild and we're going to get back to work.
I don't want to live in America. I don't want to have a passport, American passport. I don't want to have a green card. I just want to have my Palestinian ID and that's it. Because Palestine still live inside of me, so I don't feel like any loyalty to here. So I don't care if I get it or not.
So it's much subtler what we actually used than the rest of what she said. She's basically, a Palestinian passport is doesn't take you anywhere. It's very difficult to travel on or do anything. And so anyway, I think that's an example of where I knew on the spot that I owed something to the audience. And I don't know if you guys, is it easy to get back to 20? I noticed the clip that you had there. No, not 20. I'm sorry, it's not that. It's 12. 12 is a piece from the laundry scene that I was telling you about.
Great.
And I'm going to show another clip, which is on this same point, and then we'll just move on.
Okay.
But if we can get back to 12, which is on menu 2.
They've got it.
They got it, okay.
So you can set it up.
But this is, a woman has just entered an old age home. The film is Home for Life. Her son and daughter-in-law this is her first day, and they're helping her to go through her laundry. And this whole scene goes on for 8 minutes, which is in screen time an eternity. And it's incredibly painful. All they talk about is laundry, and they're treating her quite badly. I'll digress for a moment. When we made this film in 1966, no one thought, we got a lot of pressure, where's the narrator telling people what's going on in this scene? And we felt everyone can understand this scene. People are very sophisticated about interpreting human behavior, and we don't need a narrator to tell people that they're treating her badly because they feel guilty about putting her in the home. Mm-hmm. So this is a short, it's 1 minute and 15 seconds, a little taste of that scene, and then I'll tell you what happened in the middle of it.
Marta, you didn't wear skirts yet here?
Huh?
You didn't wear skirts?
Here, you want to wear this tomorrow? This is Mark. Okay?
Well, I've got one on. I don't know if it's marked or not.
Well, all right, wait.
It's not marked. You have to
We'll
get
leave it in her drawer, honey. She'll
I'm
look
trying to
for it.
organize.
All right. This is. Where should I put this? On your nice table here?
Don't go on the...
Ma, I'll put it on the nice table.
Yeah, Nick and Neil.
Oh, Lord, no. Honey, put this back in your mother's drawer. I have another glove at home that matches this.
Take it back and bring it with you
Oh.
when you get the pair.
All right. Was this marked?
Is this the marked one?
Which one? No, I think Wally said he's going to take this home and disabled and told Wally to bring it.
Well, Wally was working
Well,
tomorrow.
he'll stop off for a minute. On the way to work, he'll run up and say hello.
It'll
And
be
he'll-
tomorrow. It'll be...
Maybe Friday. Do you want me to do anything else in your closet?
Yeah, you better do that.
So I'm, I think, 23 years old. This is our first film.
Right.
And I'm filming this scene that I know is an incredible scene. I know it's going to be probably the heart of the movie. And right in the middle of the scene, the old woman, who's I think 83, turns to me and she says, I don't want to be in the movie anymore. It's too much. She's, And I should dig this out and put it together for teaching purposes or whatever. The camera goes dark. I shut the camera off, but the sound keeps going because in those days you recorded on a separate on the Nagra. And you hear this 23-year-old kid talking to this woman and saying, look, this is so important. You're having a difficult time adjusting to the home. And, people are going to learn from this and they'll make everything better and you're helping everybody. And, this goes on for maybe 5 minutes. And finally he says, oh, okay, I'll be in the movie. And the camera goes on and the scene continues as if nothing had happened. I mean, it was just like, just picked right up. And it took me a while. I don't think I knew right when I did it what I had done. But I certainly, looking back, realized I have to take responsibility for that. I had done something. I have all the power in that situation. She has no power. She probably thinks I work for the home, I mean, it's that kind of thing. So I think very early on we were thinking about ethics.
Right. Just a question about maybe linking these last two clips that you showed us. I mean, the one we just saw is shot on film. The first one on videotape, where you can just keep shooting as long as you want. And I wonder if that's made a difference in terms of the relationship between filmmaker and subject.
That's a really good question. I've been asked many questions about the difference between film and video, and everybody's interested in the technology. But I think you're right. It does change our relationship to the subject. We used to turn the camera, the audio would be continuously recording, but we would be turning the camera on and off a lot because it was so expensive. And you're constantly making judgments about what might be important for the film. And so in a sense, you're doing a lot of editing in the field. Now we just shoot everything and we bring it all back into the editing room. I think it does change some things. But I'm not sure I know exactly what it is. I think that because the magazines were only 11 minutes long, we would also stop more, and so there was more of that time just in the course of filming to build your relationship with your subjects. And I think when I'm shooting, I still do that. You know, like sometimes someone will say to me, you know, well, why did you stop? And it's like, not just that I'm tired of holding the camera, it's that I want to just deal with the people without the camera, without making the film. And that's another one of our principles. So with Home for Life, with this film, you know, these are early days. We had no budget for this film and we had no jobs. So we spent a month in the old age home without any film in the camera, just letting people see the camera, get used to it. Because then a camera was a much more unusual thing to be in someone's environment. We do a lot less of that now because when you pull out a video camera, everybody's familiar with it. There's a film, I don't think I have a clip from it, I have a clip, but it's not relevant, called The Enquiring Nuns, where we went around, and this was from the 60s, and we asked people, they were two real nuns, and we were making a bunch of films for the Catholics. And we would, you know, whatever we were interested in, suddenly it was Catholic. We would find a way to make it Catholic. And we had seen a film called Chronicle of Summer, and there was a famous scene of two women going around asking people, are they happy? Two nuns going around asking people, are they happy? We couldn't make that film today because when we did it in the 60s, everybody took them for what they were, which was real nuns who were really interested in knowing the answer to that question. Today, people would assume it's Jay Leno or it's, you know, some kind of parody or that kind of thing. So there have been changes that make things easier, and there have also been changes that I think make things harder.
Sure. People would perform differently now for the camera than they would then.
Absolutely. They literally sound differently. Although in that film, once the interview began, they are amazingly natural, and I think it's partly because they're talking to sisters. There's an immediate bond of trust and really no suspicion in the way that people responded to them.
Yeah. Another example you want to share with us?
Yeah. Let's look at... This takes us into a different area. This is clip number 15, so it's on the same, it's on menu 2 there. And this is a film from Stevie, a film by Steve James. And Steve made a film, he started off making a film about a young man he had been a big brother to. And kind of Southern Illinois, kid had had a terrible life, abused by his mother, foster care, institutions, really had a tough life. And now it's 20 years later, so this is a 20-year-old, very troubled young man. And Steve always felt guilty about abandoning this kid, sort of. He went off to be a filmmaker. This kid is still in Southern Illinois. And while we were making the film, Stevie is arrested for molesting his niece. And so it becomes a very different film. And there were constant struggles during the making of this film about, should we continue making it? What are we doing? That kind of thing. And the scene you're about to see is a scene, we're driving in the car, and forgot what we're doing, but Steve and Stevie are talking about it a little bit, first in the car and then out by a temporary place where Stevie was living. So we can see that clip 12. What did I say? Oh yeah, it's right.
Stevie wasn't happy with me either. When he found out that I'd interviewed Wendy, the mother of the victim, he felt betrayed, like I'd chosen her side over his. As we drove, I kept thinking Stevie had wanted to be in this film mostly to spend time with me again. And here I was, repaying him by putting his tortured life on display.
Do you feel like I've stabbed you in the back?
I ain't too crazy about you talking to Wendy, if that's what you mean.
Do you understand that no matter what, whether I believe you're innocent or guilty, you know, in this trial, that I'm going to be there for you? You understand that? I mean, I'd like to be a character witness for you, if you want me to. I'm not saying it well. I'll say it better in an interview, but I guess I just want you to know that I'm in your corner, you know?
I guess that's kind of good to know, I guess.
And you're still my little brother. Know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, Jelly Bean.
So that's incredibly painful to watch. His breathing, I mean, he's incredibly uncomfortable there.
Yeah.
So,
and it was, you know, there's that moment at the end. It's actually, it's a little bit longer in the film, and in the footage it was even longer, where I kept thinking they're going to hug. But of course, it's a couple of guys, that's all you get. But Stevie, I think, is you know, one of my favorite films of ours. And it was very complicated ethically as it evolved. And some people don't like the film. They make the same kind of criticisms that they do of Grey Gardens, the Maysles film. We're exploiting him, we're, you know, that kind of thing. And we put stuff in the film where people will look at it and say, well, you know, Steve James did this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, yeah, we know that. We put it in the film so you could see it. I mean, we knew what we were doing there. We knew that there was that opening for people to be very critical of Steve in the film. And it was a struggle to balance, you know, kind of one of our underlying premises, which I could digress into my Ricky Leacock story, which is we want you to like Stevie. We want you to care about this kid. At the same time that we want you to hold him accountable for what he did, because he did it. This is not a film about an innocent man. And for a while there's some question about that, but as the film proceeds, he really did abuse this young girl that he was babysitting for. And that's very contradictory. That's difficult. So that was the struggle in making this film. And one of my earliest, really before I even became a filmmaker, ethical lessons for our ethos. Ethics are different. I think it's not like there's a list of rules and you got to follow these rules. And I think when people think that way, it really leads to kind of bad ethics in many ways. So I know that there are, like, sometimes, you know, journalistic rules. You don't ask somebody to do something, or, you know, I asked people to walk through the door again because we didn't get it, or, you know, something like that. I don't think they're rules that get you to the truth. And very often I think people have dotted all the I's in terms of, you know, yes, they've been journalistically, they've followed all the rules, but they're asking the wrong question, or they're pointing their camera in the wrong direction. So where you stand when you film something, if it's something that involves, for instance, the police, If you're viewing the demonstration from behind the police lines, it looks one way. If you've come with the demonstrators and you're with them, the whole scene looks different. We're showing in a few nights on the 22nd something that I shot 50 years ago. It's the anniversary of the Great Chicago School Boycott. And we were the boycotters. We were marching with them. We were coming with them. And then when we got downtown, there were a lot of police. They thought there was going to be a riot. Actually, nothing happened. It was and if you'd been with the boycotters, you would have known that everybody was completely cool, very disciplined, you know. But when we got downtown, I did glance up and I noticed where the news media was set up, and they were set up sort of on the other side behind the police lines. Anyway, Ricky Leacock is one of the fathers of cinema verite. He was a hero of mine. I'm a student at the University of Chicago, and I've gone to the Montreal Film Festival. And I think some of you here might have heard of the film Lonely Boy. It's a film about Paul Anka, who is a musician, and it's really the first rock and roll film ever. Every cliche you've seen in every rock and roll film is in Lonely Boy, done in the early 60s. The girls shrieking and crying and all of it, it's all in there. And it's like, I'm there with a woman who I was hoping was going to become my girlfriend, and which is relevant to Ricky Leacock. And we've seen this movie, and we're in the cafe, and we're just both bubbling over. It's so exciting. It's such a great movie. And this guy walks over and sits down and says, "Hi, I'm Ricky Leacock." He introduces himself. "Here's my hero. I've never met him. I've been studying his work." And he's not very excited about the film. He's like, well, you know, he's critical of it. And we're just like, well, why? You know, what was wrong? He says, look, this guy's a musician. There's a moment on the stage where he's composing before a concert. He's working on a song. And they cut right to his very nasal manager saying, "He is the greatest talent since Beethoven." And the whole film was like that, very satirical, very looking down their nose. And I sort of realized what he was saying, which was, don't make films about people that you don't like or respect in some way. Now, that's not true of all filmmakers, but it's a very important principle for Kartemquin, that we're always looking for that kind of connection. I think the reason Leacock came over and sat down is because of my hopefully to be girlfriend. Because he's known for that.
And in the clip you just showed us where we see Steve James, the filmmaker, talking to his subject.
Absolutely.
Then how are we supposed to feel about him, right?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to feel a similar kind of empathy or like for the filmmaker? Because I didn't like him in that scene.
And it's tricky. That was a very complicated thing that we were trying. We don't want you to wind up disliking Steve, because you see Steve struggling with this in the film. And Steve is in Stevie, and it's critical to Stevie. It's what makes the movie. He's in it more than probably any other film we've ever done in that way. That's not usually well, we've made films, that's not true in The Family. We've made other films where the central character is the filmmaker. You know, in that case, she carries the BRCA breast cancer gene. It's about her. And through her, we see the whole story. But here, it really was about Stevie. And as the film changed, as we went along, it was really the crew. It wasn't Steve who put him in the movie. It was us saying, Steve, we would interview Steve. We would put him up against the wall and start asking him questions. And finally, he began to see that his struggle and his contradictions with the fact that he's actually making this movie need to be something that you see. So, when I say we want characters that you can find some way to like, Stevie is not a very likable kid. I mean, as the film progresses, he's a hard young man to like, but it's finding the way in to give somebody a sense of what it is of value in this person as a human being, and that we're not just using them as fodder for our ironic or, looking down their nose at them, that kind of thing. I think, there are filmmakers who do that, and Michael Moore does it in various ways, and I'm a big fan of Michael Moore. We don't make films like his. but I think for us it's a fairly important principle.
Any powerful people you want to show? You've talked about relations
I do
with the
have a
less
clip
powerful.
here. I have to set this up, and let me give you the number because it's way at the end. It actually is a clip with Bill T. Jones, and he's here. And it's clip 36. So it's on menu 4, and it's clip 36. And this is an example of something I was talking about earlier, actually, where somebody said, don't film now. The other thing that it's an example of is editing. So in this clip, you're going to see, and the clip isn't, unfortunately on the DVD it's not quite right, but you're going to see Bill getting very frustrated and very angry with the people that he's working with, and kind of yelling and, you know, kind of hitting the wall and leaving the room. And then the next day he comes in and gives an apology, and then the whole piece, when he's talking intimately with his company, is very, very powerful. They cut it off before it gets to the most powerful part, but it's a great scene in the movie with the arc of what he's saying to these people about how he's taking him into what it is that he struggles with. So let's play that clip if you've got it. It's kind of long.
We are. So it's not just applause. There's feeling in it.
Bill is on fire, and it's good and it's bad sometimes. You know, he comes in with an urgency. Sometimes you're not ready for it.
Do another type of song against it. Do the Scottish song against it.
Or sometimes he comes in and we don't know where he is. And sometimes he shares it with us. This is what I'm feeling. This happened in the world today, and I'm feeling this way.
I'm really not feeling good, and it's going to get worse this afternoon, okay? All right, you understand? But Happy New Year. I'm impatient with my colleagues. That's one thing. And then I don't often know what I'm doing, and I'm impatient with me. That's another thing. Focus, please. And there's deep feelings of inadequacy. Can I do what I have to do? And
if I saw a venomous snake crawling in the road, any man would say,
slow down, slow down, slow down.
Stick and kill it.
Straight line.
But if I found that snake in bed with one of
I used to say that I want grace.
I might hurt the children more.
That my reward in this life would be to find what grace is. Right now, it's all choppy seas. All choppy seas. Grace is for the saints. I'm not a saint. Don't aspire to be one yet. I want to be a two-fisted maker.
He doesn't sleep much, apparently, and he obsesses over things. He reads a lot, and he's constantly making and thinking in his head.
I hear them explain it, I hear you explain it, and they're doing it in different ways. Let's just decide one. There's a fire every day. There is no easing up. When I go out of here tonight and my friend takes care of me, then I can rest until tomorrow. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I will be awake doing it again. And then when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll suddenly have an idea or be in a bad mood. And he talks me down. And then we get in the car, come in, and everyone's rested, and we jump into it again.
Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life.
Oh, shit. You're supposed to go up that way.
Hello, 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 hello. I apologize for leaving yesterday in a funk, and I apologize for being disrespectful. I don't want to be abusive. I had a very bad morning. I was going to cancel rehearsal today because I didn't think I could face you, but that's cowardly. And I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a coward. And I don't know what art making is right now. So that's why it feels like, why is he changing things? Why is he interrupting my composition? I'm trying to feel my way into making nothing into something. I'm trying to make a work that when he says he's born in 1952 and all these things, there's so much I want to say to you.
So that goes on for another minute or so, and it only gets better. But if you'll notice, it really got somewhere. But if you'll notice at the beginning of Bill's apology, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, the camera's on the floor. Keith Walker, who shot that, someone said to Keith, "Don't shoot this. We don't want you to shoot now." And so Keith put the camera on the floor, and it was just going. The other thing that we've done there, and I don't think that Bill actually ever noticed this, that's 2 different days. That's not the same day. And we felt comfortable putting that together and creating that scene. I mean, again, you talk about what we were talking about earlier about, how you feel about people. It's like we're making a film about a great artist, but we don't want to make a biography. We want to make a film about the nitty-gritty of what it's like to make art. That's what really interested us. That's why we wanted to make the film in the first place. And the title of the film, the piece that they're working on originally was going to be called A Good Man. Later they changed it to Fondly Do We Hope, Fervently Do We Pray, from one of Lincoln's speeches, and it was like, oh my God, there goes our good title, A Good Man is a great title. And then we realized, no, we can keep the title. And all of that ambiguity is there. It's like A Good Man Lincoln, A Good Man Bill T. Jones. We want all of that ambiguity in the film. And in putting these 2 pieces together, one of the reasons I felt comfortable with that kind of editorial, in a sense the audience sees it and they think it's all the same day, was that I think that those kind of contradictions are things that Bill feels about himself. In other words, I don't think we were distorting anything, and I don't think we were distorting the emotion that what he said when the camera was on the floor is in emotional tone, in feeling, in terms of opening himself up to his company, is very similar to what he said that we got actually several weeks later in a completely different context. So I felt it was legitimate to put them together. I once did criticize a filmmaker who did Waiting for Superman. Someone was interviewing me about the ethics of a particular shot in that movie where there's a woman in a charter school and she's looking at the school where her son could possibly go, and it's a tour of the school. And he's misrepresenting, in other words, you see a certain kind of emotion on her face, and it's not the emotion that it's actually she's viewing the school I can't remember which is which now, but I believe in the film, you think that she's looking at the school, that this is where her son could go, and it's bringing up all these emotions in her. And in fact, I think she's looking at the school after he didn't win the lottery and he's not going, or the opposite. But I think it would have been wrong to misrepresent an emotion. We wouldn't do that. Here it was like, well, it is a different day, it's the same kind of thing, but we felt confident that the emotion was fair. But did you ever know that, Bill, did you guys catch that?
I never understood the camera on the ground. So is there footage in there of the camera on the ground? Is that he pulling them over, come on over?
Yeah, when that long shot. In other words, that very, very long, he's looking at it. Yeah, it's a nice shot. It just happened. But he's just put the camera on the floor.
Is that remember when you guys made a version of it and I said, oh, it's nice, but I think it could be stronger or something?
No, wasn't that. No, you know what that was about, and that's what you get. We were showing you the film. If you're referring to what I think it is, it had to do with the opening of the film. And you had a lot of criticisms of the opening of the film, as did Susan Lacey from American Masters. And you kind of like the elements that we have, but it wasn't quite there. And it was one of those things, when we went away from that meeting, I think David, the editor, was there, and Bob Hercules, my co-director, and we were like, you know, they're right. We didn't have it worked out right. And you gave us some ideas. I think it had to do with the interview from the University of Virginia and how we had used that.
Well, it was wonderful because you were so open to it. And the film, I was trembling when I first saw it because who wants to be seen like that? You know? But you know, we had a relationship, and I trust. And even now I say, people say, oh, it's a wonderful document. It's tough on me, but I stand by it as a document of the creative process. So I think you gave me an opportunity to rise above my own engagement.
Wow.
And that issue is critical, the trust. I mean,
yes.
One of the reasons, it's not why I think it's so important that we have ethics, but you do want to communicate that to your subjects. You want to let them know that there is a basis for trust here, and it does have to be a two-way street. One other detail that I just want to mention.
And then we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay, let me show one more clip, because something that I'll also talk about that many people won't is money. And so I'm not going to show the Hoop Dreams clip. I'm going to show a different one. It's clip number 24, and it says Maxwell Street, if we can get to that one. And it's on menu 3. And this is a film that was made when I was learning to be a filmmaker. So this is Mike Shea's film. Howard Alk shot it, and I did the sound.
What year was this?
This would be 1964. And we're filming on Maxwell Street, just the market, the open-air market, which no longer exists. If you go to Maxwell and Halsted now, it's like going into another universe in the South Loop there. But I want to show you a clip. Have we got that one?
Yeah, it's here.
Okay, let's play it, and then I'll tell you. There's an obvious question that's raised. So the question is, how did he get the money? Yeah, I think you can, we let it play. You can see the knife is rubber. But the obvious question there is, okay, we're filming this scene. You see this little kid. He wants that little saxophone, and he's counting his money there, and he doesn't have enough. So I gave him a quarter. A bigger aspect of that, you know, if you were being journalistically pure, you wouldn't do that. There's a scene in Hoop Dreams, which I'm not going to show, but it's a scene where the family's lights have been shut off because they haven't been able to pay the electric bill. Those of you who see it know the family, they're walking around with these lights. They're getting some long cords to get electricity from the apartment below, and they look pretty unhappy and pissed off. Part of that is because we're there filming it, because they don't want to be shown that way. And that raises another question, which is, you know, one of the things that you really have to do is you have to make people understand that they need to let us there at the darkest moments of their lives, and that we do believe they'll overcome. We do believe that they will, you know, and you're looking for that. You're looking for that story arc. But in storytelling, if you don't have the down, then the up isn't nearly as powerful. So that's why trust building and why we take so long in making our films is to really get on that level with people. But when the lights were turned out, people often ask, you know, well, did you give them money to turn the lights back on? And we did. We did because we're in a human relationship with these people. We've been with them for years. When you spend years if somebody has their power shut off, we give them the money. We don't cross certain kinds of lines, but in that kind of situation, we're always doing things. We're buying the family meal, we're doing various kinds of things. The bigger question with Hoop Dreams was, what happened when the film made a lot of money? Because we told the families, we tell everybody, you know, no documentaries make any money, this film's not gonna make any money, you know, they sign the releases, and, you know, well, this film made a lot of money. And we had big meetings with the families, with the participants from the film in the storefront of Cartemquin. There were something like 2 accountants and 4 lawyers. And we came to an agreement we initiated this. We were going to pay them the same amount of money that the producers made, that Steve James and Fred Marks and Peter Gilbert. However, we had to, so yes, you know, that was, to me, that was the right thing to do, the ethical thing to do. It was a lot of money, and no one ever regretted it. I did make one error, which is I should have put a time limit on it, because we're still involved. With the major families, we're still involved, but we're also involved with all these minor characters who are getting a check for like 87 cents because of the way we set it up.
Wow, wow.
But,
so Gordon, we should open it up for questions, because we have less than 10 minutes now.
Okay, sorry.
Gordon, I was just wondering if you have, is this on? Yeah. Okay, if you have examples of times when you think that you ultimately made the wrong decision instead of that you feel comfortable about it afterwards?
Yeah, I don't have a clip, but I know a time when I made the wrong decision. I was filming, I was just working as a technician, I was the camera person, and we were filming for something called Real People. Do people remember Real Something? It was a precursor to reality television, and they were interviewing, it was about a woman who they were using hypnosis to help her remember being kidnapped by her boyfriend and kind of taken on a killing spree. And they did the interview and everything was fine. And then they said, anybody have any other questions? And I asked the question from behind the camera, were you ever afraid that he was going to kill you? And she broke down and started crying and kind of lost it all. Now, I think it was a fine question, but not for real people. I never should have asked that question in that situation. Let me tell you a story, though, because I have a great story about the great actress, Lee Grant. Yeah, Lee Grant. and I'm shooting for her. And it's a film about a policewoman whose husband is a policeman. They're separated, and he has killed her in front of the children. She knew she was trying to get help. She reported it to the police. She did everything, and she still got murdered. And we're getting the story from her best friend, her part of the story, in her house where everything's very neat. And we do this interview where we're shooting film, so it's 11-minute magazines. And this woman holds herself together through the whole interview. And we have it. And finally, Lee says, okay, I think we're done, you know, that was good. And the woman breaks down and starts crying. And the young assistant from New York is like poking me, you know, put the magazine back on, start filming, put the magazine back on. And Lee looked over at me and she said, we're done. And she was right. We had everything we needed from that woman, and her tears are just below the surface. We did not need her crying, and it was important to her not to be represented that way. And so that was, you know, a moment where Lee, I think, made exactly the right ethical.
Although that breakdown moment has become very popular in documentary.
It's become very popular, and it's, you know, yeah, it's over. In some ways, I think it's overused, and I think sometimes, you know, people have learned if they're in a film, well, they're not going to pay attention to me unless I really cry.
Wow. Another question?
So, Gordon, I saw a film you did on campus of like a psychedelic band playing.
Oh, yeah.
So you were clearly like on the stage, very close to everyone. And I don't know if it's, you know, ethics or courtesy, but the idea of you being on the stage when people are supposed to be watching the stage. I mean, is that an ethical issue? Is that something you have to consider?
Those were, they had been University of Chicago students, and now they were a hippie collective in Colorado, so they were my friends. And so in that—
For them, but I mean for the audience. Like the audience.
Being in front of the audience or that kind of thing. In that situation, I really wasn't concerned about it. I think I have often shot in situations where I'm doing something similar, where it is a, you know, a venue or something. But usually they let the audience know that this is being filmed, and so there may be some moments when that happens. Well, a good example is at Ravinia when, you know, the piece that Bill was working on in the company was being presented. We were filming it with many cameras. None of them were on the stage, and we were very careful to make sure we weren't blocking people's sight lines and that kind of thing, that we weren't interfering with people's ability to, you know, experience the performance.
Any other questions? Here's one.
Yes.
I wanted to know if you are the typical in terms of your ethics, or are you very exceptional?
Well, you know, I don't know quite how to answer that. I know that Cartemquin is an institution. There's a lot of young people there. We deal with a lot of different directors, and the ethic that I've been talking about is certainly something that we're trying to communicate to the people that we work with and the next generation. We were confronted with something a few months ago that had never occurred to me, which is, and I now, when we get the new cohort of interns in, it didn't used to be that I greeted them or anything. Other people really do that. But I come in and I talk to them about ethics, because we had a situation where we were working on a film and somebody was tweeting and showing, you know, with a picture and showing, oh, look where I am, and then I'm in this way, you know, and it was like, wait a minute, you know. And so now I talk to them about, you know, we are in very intimate relationships with our subjects, and we have to be very careful about how we tweet, you know, it's all proprietary and private, and, you know, to give them a sense of that ethic.
Yeah. The way that these new media opened it up more.
Yeah,
really interesting.
the other thing that I talk to people about when I'm approached by someone with an idea for a film, I asked this to the guys who made Hoop Dreams when they first came into to Cartemquin, which is I ask, what makes you think you have the right to tell these people's stories? What gives you the right to do that? I'm not looking for a particular answer. There is no right answer to the question. That you've thought about the question is what's important. People say, oh, I want to do a film about homelessness. And if they haven't thought about that question, they're not really ready to do that film yet, and they're going to make some really bad ethical decisions, is my belief. So ethics is something that I think it's not a set of rules. Maybe in the school of Aristotle, I shouldn't be saying that, but ethics is asking the questions and understanding that you have to take responsibility for your decisions.
Very powerful. Thank you. Oh, last one.
Yes, hi, Gordon. Somewhat academic art history question, but Cartier-Bresson, with photography, said that the photographer never interferes in the shoot.
Yes.
In the early 60s, William Klein interfered with the shoot, and famously in his book New York and so on.
Right.
That seems to be when you started. And was this a conscious decision of your role as a documentary filmmaker, or was it just, in retrospect, a discovery?
That's a really good question, because when we started out, and if you look at Home for Life, we're kind of purists. On the other hand, we were also very influenced by Jean Rouch, the French, who were interfering, who were engaging. And very early on, I think we began to see, sometimes it was the subjects that would pull us into the film. I think we began to see that we couldn't just be a fly on the wall. We weren't invisible. And that's why I have that argument with people who accuse the early verite, and I know Bresson has said that. I think it's a little different in still photography. But I think the reality is the convention of movies, you can try to be invisible, but you're there, you're not invisible. And then in fact, our process, even in Home for Life, there's a little bit of narration that shouldn't be there actually, but it is there. But there's one scene where we're being such purists that we have asked it's a residence meeting, and we've asked the heads of the home to, discuss new residents coming into the home at that particular meeting when we're filming. They do it all the time, but we wanted to make sure it was on the agenda because our film is about new residents coming into the home. So we wanted to see it discussed at that meeting. We have a little piece of narration that says we asked them to talk about that. We're being that. Today, I don't think I would do that. I think I would, and I think that it's a combination of both. It was, even from the beginning, we were open to it, and then over the years, as you made films, you really began to see. In Hoop Dreams, I really wanted, there's a moment where Steve is it's fairly verite, it's fairly just watching things happen, and there's some interviews. But there's a moment where it's back and forth between Steve and Arthur about this paper that he's writing about the butterfly. And Steve is trying to cajole him and pull it out to get him to talk about it. And you hear Steve's voice, and I wanted just that sense of here's who the filmmaker is, and here's the relationship between the two of them. So now we're always looking for that. We're looking for ways to reveal our relationship to the subject, and it's become a part of our ethic because we think it makes the frame more honest. If you're not invisible, don't pretend to be invisible. If you're really invisible, like maybe Cartier-Bresson was at times, you can say that, but he also took pictures of people looking into the camera. They're not invisible.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you so much.